Hi everyone, welcome to Itsy Bitsy's live read from Tempting the Cowboy by Melissa Keir. Prologue, January. My name is Johnson and I'm an alcoholic. I fell off the wagon again. His voice came out with more force than he planned. Luckily, it hadn't wavered. Today was the toughest day, the first time back after his latest stumble. Hello, Johnson, the people replied. He glanced around at the faces. Black, white, Asian, young, old, male, and female. Every single person unique except for the fact that they were all facing the same demon. An older woman spoke up. Good for you, for admitting you have a problem. We all fall. It's the getting back up that is the hardest. Johnson nodded at the woman and gripped his Stetson tighter in his hands. It's going to be worthless if I keep playing with it. But it felt good to have something to do. Lifting a glass felt like second nature, especially when he was stressed. It was ironic that while sitting here among those who probably understood him best, he most wanted a drink. He closed his eyes and let the voices fade as he recalled meeting Deborah. Jake's wedding was in full reception. Johnson hated wearing the monkey suit, but since he was the best man, his buddy had insisted. He tried drinking to lessen his discomfort, and after 4 glasses of Jack, he wasn't feeling any pain. Yet the suit hadn't gotten any more comfortable. An enchanting and beautiful woman captured his gaze, sending his cock springing to attention. Determined to snag her notice, he strolled over and dropped down into the chair next to her. Weddings are a buzzkill. Most people use weddings as a reason to get their buzz on. Her eyes trailed up his body. I hope she likes what she sees. I certainly like her body. Not one of those skinny women who are all sharp edges. Her full figure was meant to be cherished. Know anyone around here with some whiskey? I'd even share. It had been the start of their love story. Deborah understood the addiction that rode him. She was a recovering alcoholic as well, each of them propping the other up and helping demolish the demon. An older gentleman who looked more like Santa Claus than a retired minister stood and faced the group. Today was our member Dennis's birthday. May he rest in peace. His invaluable support throughout the years will always be remembered and should be celebrated. I believe he's watching over us all today and cheering on your successes. Let's go around the circle and share a memory of Dennis with the group. Who will start? Johnson thought about what he would share. Dennis had been a great friend, always there to talk to, not just a friend, but also his sponsor. The man told it like it was, no bullshit. Many times he put Johnson in his place, urging him to pick himself up or not waddle in the pity party. He remembered the night he sat in the hospital after Dennis's heart attack, worried he'd lose his friend. That night, Johnson had made a few promises to God, promises he'd keep if he'd save his friend. Thankfully, Dennis had pulled through and was able to see his grandson walk again. Johnson, do you have a story to share? He cleared his throat. Many memories flooded his mind. Which one to choose? Finally, he spoke. Dennis loved his grandson, but he lived with the guilt over the accident that put Mickey into a wheelchair. The day Mickey's legs regained some feeling, Dennis was over the moon. I swear he stood taller, and if he'd finally broke free of the guilt from the accident. Seeing the smile on his face as he held Mickey was a moment I will never forget. Miracles happen, and Dennis certainly deserved one. Voices chimed in and people nodded. Thank you, Johnson, the leader said. Dennis truly understood what it was to face his demons. Anita, you're next. Johnson listened as the rest of the voice shared. Each story touched on what a wonderful person his sponsor had been. If only Dennis was here today to help him once more. Chapter 1, October. The high ball of glass of amber liquid drew Johnson's gaze. He leaned in and inhaled. His mouth watered and his stomach clenched. The feeling of the liquid sliding down his throat, the burn in his belly, the familiar sensations, his gut turned with need. He lifted the glass to eye level and studied it. The weight felt comfortable, like an old friend. Rolling the whiskey, he studied how it painted the glass, a gold yellow like the sun on a summer's day. His hand shaking, he set it down and wiped the sweat from his brow. A pain pulsed in his jaw. Probably gritting my teeth again. I do that way too often. He shifted his jaw to the side, trying to stop the pain. You okay, handsome? The breathtaking brunette bartender asked with a wink. Do you want something other than Jameson? The woman's short, dark hair reminded him of his favorite dark chocolate, but it was her smile that charmed him. Her hourglass figure brought to mind Hollywood scarlets like Marilyn Monroe or Sophia Loren, scarlets who oozed sex appeal. Women today worry too much about being skinny. Thank God for a lush, full-figured woman. For the last week, he'd stopped in at the cotton gin and had gotten to know the 30-year-old single mother. Danny Harlow had risen above the bumps she'd faced from her teenage pregnancy and suffering abuse from her ex-husband, finally finding a job that allowed her to afford a small home. He had admired her and was flattered such a striking young woman gave him the time of day. Her interest went to his head, both of them. While happily married, he was thrilled by the attention of this gorgeous, sexy woman. If he was honest with himself, she drew him to the bar as much as the golden whiskey. Johnson shook his head. No, I'm going to let this one sit. Thanks, Danny. He raised his eyes and met her gaze. Danny leaned her arms on the bar, exposing her full cleavage and the lace edge of her hot pink bra. She reached over, grabbed his drink, and raised it to her lips. Then she tipped the glass back. Her tongue slid out to tease at the liquid. Then she rubbed the glass against her neck. He swallowed hard. Did she act this way only around him? Was she interested in something more? It was a tempting thought, but he wouldn't take her up on her offer. Deborah, his beloved wife, had come into his life at his boss's wedding and turned his world upside down. If he wasn't married, he might have pursued Danny, but not now. Hot in here tonight, she licked her lips, sending Johnson's cock to attention. It didn't matter that he was happily married. When a stunning woman gave a man such an intentional come on, a dead man would sit up and beg. Sure is. Strange for late October. Must be Indian summer. Johnson's glance at his phone. Almost 1:30. I'd best get back to work. He pushed the alcohol away from him and stood. Thankfully, his feet were steady, but even though they felt like noodles. You forgot your drink, she called out. He glanced over his shoulder at her. You drink it. He didn't stay to see if she did. Johnson spent the drive back to the Hartsong Ranch berating himself. He never should have stopped at the bar again. Each day when he left there, he vowed not to return. Yet for the past week, he had broken that oath. His vows were little more than empty promises. He'd fallen off the wagon before, once at Jake's wedding, when he and Deborah met, and then he continued to fight during the good fight. They both were recovering alcoholics who supported each other. Johnson had his AA sponsor to talk to, but he hadn't wanted to bother the man. He could handle it himself. Hadn't he walked away today? And each day so far? Maybe the bar was way too much. Was his way of proving that he could be around alcohol and not drink. Besides, he didn't really know his new AA mentor. Marcus had only been with him for 3 months. His former sponsor, Dennis, had passed 6 months ago after a short battle with liver cancer. The man had faced his share of health scares, but the Big C was a battle he couldn't win. Sadly, the doctors hadn't caught it early, and Dennis was happy to stop fighting the pain and reunite with his late wife. His old friend would say he was playing with fire, both with the picturesque brunette and the whiskey. He'd also be the first to tell him to cut the crap and stop making excuses. Dennis was a crusty guy who told it like it is, or was. With a sigh, Johnson raised his eyes to the skyline and spoke directly to his buddy. Please put in a good word with God and lend me your strength. I have to stop visiting the cotton gin. Today will be the last day I stop in. He pulled into the ranch's driveway. His boss, Jake Kincaid, had started the equine therapy ranch after his brother was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Jake had decided to help others who struggled from special needs kids to Alzheimer's patients. Sadly, the boss's brother had killed himself before he could get the treatment he needed. Johnson parked his truck by the barn and grabbed his leftover lunch before heading into the corral. "Hey, Jake, I'm back." The younger man turned from where he was brushing a horse. "How was lunch?" "Good. Deborah has been learning a few new recipes from your wife, and I love being her guinea pig." He patted his stomach. "Of course, I need to work off those extra pounds a little harder." Jake chuckled. "Don't we keep you active enough here? Don't tell me you are going to join a gym," he teased. "We have a full afternoon. First up, Stella, who is going to be working with Cheyenne. At 3, we have the group from the senior center coming to interact with the horses." "Nah, boss man, no gym for me. I don't think I could handle the workouts." He squatted with his hands straight out to his sides and nearly fell in a pile of manure. "The seniors are a hoot, so frightened of the big animals, but by the end of their visit, they are upset to head back home." Jake moved the small brush over the horse's neck and chest. "I like how we have been able to include the seniors in our program. They need a reason to get out of the nursing home. The horses love them as well. It's as if they share a special language. Seriously, I hope I die in my sleep before Angela puts me in a home. No matter what we do to help them, they walk a rough road." "You have time to worry about it, unlike me." Johnson held up his leftover lunch. "Let me toss this garbage, and I'll get the blanket and the adaptive saddle for Stella." "Great," Jake nodded, and Johnson turned away. He let out a sigh as he entered the barn. Johnson hated lying to his friend. He had eaten his lunch, but it was quick. Shovel it into his mouth event, rather than a normal meal. Probably why he had a little burning in his chest. Heartburn again. He couldn't tell his boss about the visits to the cotton gin, while Jake would be mad about drinking while handling the horses. He would be more upset that Johnson was putting his sobriety at risk by visiting his old favorite watering hole. And of course, Jake couldn't keep it from his wife, Angela, nor would she keep it from her friend, Johnson's wife. He wouldn't be able to deal with the pain in Deborah's eyes. He'd lose her trust in him, and if he lied about the alcohol, and he'd promised to never lie to her. Oh, she would understand the lure of the whiskey, but then he'd also have to explain his attraction to the suggestive bartender. I doubt she'd understand that. After tossing the paper bag into the garage can, he lifted the horse's blanket and slung it over his shoulder, then hoisted the saddle into his arms. The afternoon's physical activities would keep his mind off the struggle of the devil's drink. At least, he'd hope so. Deborah lifted the coffee mug and inhaled the rich aroma of white chocolate and caramel. She loved stopping by Café French for her afternoon pick-me-up. "How is the house business?" Angela dropped into the chair next to Deborah. Deborah took a sip before answering. "With the feds reducing the mortgage rates again, Whisper Ranch Realty is on track to have a banner quarter, but it's a seller's market. Inventory is low, so buyers are having to make a decision right away and place an offer if they even think they want the house. Most of the houses are selling at asking price or higher. My last sale turned into a bidding war between 3 buyers. Luckily, the sellers adored the love note the buyers wrote about the house. Sometimes those little things will sway their decision." Angela brushed her hair off her face and readjusted her ponytail. "Seller's market, buyer's market. Any market is good for you," she laughed. "True, but I do want my client to be happy. Buying a home is a big investment and an emotional one. At least most sellers aren't having to do a short sale. Those days appear to be over. Knock on wood. She rapped on the table and then took another sip of her coffee. "This is so delicious. You'll have to teach me how to make it. If I do that, you'll never come in here and visit with me," she nudged her friend. "Oh, you know I'd still be by." Thank you for listening.